You're tuned into the In the Know Breakfast Show on BRIMBANK Live on Live FM. We're your hosts, AD and Lydia. And today we're joined by social advocate, musician, and youth leader, Titan Debirioun. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
It's dope. It's dope to be here.
So we just wanted to talk about, policing and over-policing of minorities and how that's kind of making people feel. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us if you've ever had an experience with the police and what kind of experience that has been?
I grew up in Surovans and then Tani. Like there's always been like an interaction with police, even if you're doing the right thing or even if you're just you're definitely going to have an interaction at some point. I've had some positive interactions with police, but I would have to say the majority have not been positive. I was seeing something else happen to one of my friends, or the cycle as it is.
So what sort of negative experiences were you having, or were your friends having when they weren't positive experiences with the police?
I feel like a lot of it kind of stems from within Tani. They had Operation Wayward operating at the same time that we were like kind of growing up, and region and all these things where there's this whole agenda of like war on Black gangs and Black criminal activity, and there was this whole spotlight that was shined onto our community. Yeah. So in response, the police force kind of like created Operation Wayward and all these different focuses and kind of zoned in on our communities. And because of that, we started seeing over-policing that was happening. It wasn't just, okay, people doing their jobs and that. It was more like, okay, enemy number one, let's make sure we always watching these kids. Let's make sure we're always at these parks, always at these places. And after a while, that kind of builds this weird vibe between you and police, because it's no longer, okay, the police force is here to protect us. More, the police force is watching us and is here to surveil us and show us their strength, and they have this war on us. And that kind of feels weird when you're not doing anything wrong, but you're always in this environment where they're watching you as if you're about to. And after a while, like resentment starts to build between both sides and stuff, because police start doing extra stuff. They start like arresting people and dragging it, like hurting people when they do that. Or they'll come to our park, especially in Tani. Like when I was growing up, they'll always be at the park that we were at, Ecoville, and they'll come in like units, like whole like teams. And it wasn't like the normal police. It was the police with like the black uniforms,
like Riot.
The city one. Wow. The Riot. Those guys, those with the big black cars and stuff. And it just felt weird because it was always like, yo, why you keep doing this to us? Why is it always this show of force? Why is it never know, like, why don't I feel like you're here to protect me? Why do I feel like you're here to be the aggressor? And why do I feel like when you guys come here, it's uncomfortable and you guys treat us as if we're like, about to do something crazy, like terrorists or something. It's crazy.
So what I'm hearing is like a complete like disproportion between what you guys were actually doing and the way they were responding to what you were
100%.
quote unquote doing, which was nothing wrong.
They weren't responding to us. I feel like they were responding to more like everything that was happening in the news and trying to save face for the police force and like state all of that, because there was this demand of justice against the Black gangs that didn't really exist to the extent that they responded to. Like there was always people that were doing bad things, but it wasn't. It didn't deserve that.
That's also a testament to the fact that the media, I think a lot of people can accept by now that the media tells its own story. And so the police were responding to that, to the story in the media, right, which wasn't actually an accurate
representation of what was
happening, right.
And with all this hype, the distrust that happens, as a Black man, trying to navigate your way through Australia, you came here since childhood. It's pretty much all you know. How does it make you feel, being discriminated against without any kind of cause other than your skin color?
It brings out like a lot of issues, because they're supposed to be like what makes you safe. They're supposed to be like there to assert justice and be the protectors of communities and stuff. And when you no longer feel like this whole entire force is there to secure your community isn't there anymore, or they're against you, you then start like wondering all these, like we don't call police, like we don't do that. It doesn't happen because it's gonna agitate the situation. It's weird. It's like a complete breakdown,
disconnect.
Of trust between those communities. And when that happens, we start like when I was growing up, my mom would tell me, if you see a police officer, just leave, like do this or go like that. Or I'd go out like to parties or something and see things happen to my friends that weren't right. But then they didn't know their rights at all. So those officers get away with those types of things. And then that goes for longer and longer and longer. And they start, once they realize they get away with certain things, they get away with more and more and more. And they start to get braver with what they do.
Yeah.
And we got so used to that happening that it became normalized. It was just like, nah, that's what the police do. If the police is this and this. And we never really took it to the next step and stuff, which just kept on going and going and going. And now, like, I don't know, it's messed up. It feels horrible because it's like, who do you go to? Like, if a police officer does something, or if they feel like, if they're above the law, in terms of how they can act and they are the law, then how are you supposed to respond to that? I know a lot of kids know that, there are things you can do.
There's
and there
people
are places you can go.
than police.
Yeah, than the police. You can hold them accountable. And then that's when the whole thing about police accountability comes into, like, comes into play in that.
That probably leads into a good question of, is that how you got into, is that frustration that you experienced with how you guys were being treated, is that what led you into doing what you do now?
That was a big part of it. Like, I'm on a police accountability kind of project with Flemington and Kensington Legal Center for like the last year and a half, 2 years. And that's a big part of it, because growing up in my community and seeing how they've treated kids, even the kids that were doing the wrong thing, it wasn't a good way of responding to it, because it's not like, that's not how you stop crime. You just build more resentment and you just cut ties, and it's not an effective way of dealing with issues, especially when it's like when it starts at the beginning of someone's offending, right? Where they can still be like, okay, cool, there's ways to push this person onto a different pathway and a system, and says that when you are like going full force into it and slamming them onto the floor and doing weird stuff, like I've had friends that have been shot in the hand with like rubber bullets and stuff and like messed up their hands and stuff, and they weren't even involved in whatever issues they are, but because we're all black and we all look like we're together, right? Even if you're at a party and you're leaving somewhere, you get attacked.
There is such thing, as like reasonable force, reasonable way to deal with things, even when people are doing the wrong thing. And I think that's where the fear comes from. It's the over.
Exactly.
Yes.
Also with, I was just thinking about the gang culture, and I think, do you think that also stems from a misunderstanding of how we as Africans feel comfortable together? So like, it's very normal for African boys together, and that's them just expressing themselves, them being safe and feeling comfortable. But then, do you think that was misinterpreted as gang activity?
Wait,
1,000%, Sam.
I want to throw something in there.
Throw it in.
It's a thing. Like when big families, and I'm sure you're going to say, yep, when big families are walking home from, say, school or something, just young kids. And a lot of people have had this experience where police or people of authority or even schools would say, separate. You make people feel uncomfortable walking in big groups together. Even if you're siblings, if there's 6 or 7 of you guys, they say, can you please walk on opposite sides of the street half and half because you're intimidating people. Have you had those experiences?
Bro, that happens to me in school. And like, it happens to me both in St. Albans, it happens to me at the Grange. Like, that happened to me in high school. Where they were like, okay, you guys are big. And they try to reason with you and they try to make it make sense and stuff, right? And it's crazy because okay, this is something that's not applied to other people.
Right, because if it was exactly, it wouldn't be an issue.
It's not. It's always us. They would get us and they'll be like, okay, there's 7 of you. And a lot of these kids play on the same basketball team, right? Like they're together because they grew up together and they have larger friend groups because community-wise, like that's what we do. We have our cousins, we have our friends, we're communal. And then we're also playing on the same basketball teams, have the same interests. And then you're in a society where you're different to everyone else. So you do want to like be with people that are like you because it's more comfortable. You don't have to go through weird experiences. You don't have to over-explain yourself. You feel like you have a home base and stuff, right? So we go out with a lot of friends and we do the same thing. So you'd be in a basketball team and you'd all be coming back, which means you go to cafes at the same time. And it's not like we're getting dropped off and picked up like everyone else. So we're using like public transport. And we'd be coming back with like transport with your friends. This just happens to be 7 you guys. You guys are like 6'5" each, like,
Yeah.
That's scary to people. And police start to like view that as gang activity and all this type of stuff, right? And then that's when you start having these weird interactions with people that starts to form your understanding of the police force and community and people being against you and all these things that you start to think. Yeah. And then this happens in school as well, because we're always together, right? Because you're the minority. And I don't know, there's this human nature to stick together, right? And that's where you form your yes. friendship basis of, because they're people that understand you. You don't have to over-explain yourself.
Yeah.
High school, they literally told us, yo, you guys have to be in 3s or in 2s or in this or in that.
Wow, really?
Like, that really happened, yeah.
They explicitly actually asked for that. Wow.
Yep.
Okay, so then it's the racism or the discrimination is actually quite blatant, because it's like, because if you're saying you have to be separate because then you're basically saying you have to be separate because you're intimidating, and you're saying you're intimidating because you're tall and you're.
But they never say intimidating. They just like Titan, like you said just before, they try and make it make sense,
but
even when it doesn't.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Can you tell us? I know, like, you use music as a huge way to kind of fight back this racism and discrimination. Can you talk to us about how you came to the realization that you can use music as a tool to kind of get your point across, you know, to rebel, to advocate for things that you believe in?
Yeah. It started pretty much in primary school. Like, I was always someone that was outspoken, right? And I got into a lot of trouble as a kid just because I didn't know how to express myself in a way that people understood. And I was very frustrated because you see things and you see like injustice, or you see things that weren't right, like weren't fair, or you get into certain situations. And I then started learning of different methods of doing that. So I got suspended a lot as a kid, like a lot, just because I was so frustrated with everything that was happening. And I realized that wasn't the way to do it, because it always has led to me being in trouble, and my side of the story never prevailed in any situation, because I'll be in the principal's office with a kid that called me the N-word, right? And I'm trying to explain to her why that really pissed me off, or why I decided to fight because of that as a kid. And their parents would come, my parents wouldn't, and they'd be like, okay, yeah, cool, nah, you're in trouble, you can go, you can leave. And I'll be there still. And I was realized, okay, cool, this isn't an effective method. I can't keep getting suspended. So I started talking, right? And I started like using reasoning and logic, right? And that worked out for a while, but then I just became the loud kid that's always disturbing and disturbing the class and all these things, right? And then I'm like, okay, cool. That's still not an effective method. I'm using logic, I'm using reasoning. People are starting to understand what I'm saying now, but after a while, it falls on deaf ears because they're like, oh, you're always just complaining. It is what it is. Stop. You know, it's not like that. It's not that deep. He didn't mean it like that. And all these things, they don't understand because it doesn't feel deep to them.
Invalidating.
They don't have the same.
Invalidating your ideas, like how you feel.
100%, because they don't have the same type of attachment that you do to your culture and your skin and why certain words offend you and stuff. They don't get it. So I'm like, okay, cool. One day I got in trouble, and it'd be like I'd gotten in trouble like a lot that month, right? So I was like, okay, I don't want to go back to the coordinator's office because I know what's about to be. So I just walked around the school halls for a while, and I saw like a sign that said like Rap 321, and it was this poetry program that was in St. Albans, actually on Freda Street, near the chocolate chicken place. It was like upstairs. It was run by like council. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm not doing anything today. I went and I met Khalid from The Africs, which is like a local hip hop band that I've been here for like a long time, that came out of Footscray, and they did some amazing things in the industry. And I started like showing him my poetry and stuff, and showing them my poetry. And they taught me like a new method of writing and turning that into rap and rhymes and stuff. And once I got the template of how you can set stuff up, like pretty basic one, I went home and that's what I did like forever. Like I just wrote a lot, and I started expressing myself, and everything that pissed me off at school, or everything that I felt wasn't fair, or my emotions and all these things, right, that I wasn't consciously doing, but unconsciously I was already writing about these things. And I was like kind of like I don't know how to express it. I was just expressing myself, right? I got better and better at these things, and I started sharing them with my friends and stuff. And they're like, yo, that's dope. I was like, oh, word? That's cool. And I just kept it up. And after that, I realized when I started performing that I can give someone a lecture for 2 hours about why the origins of the N-word, or the origins of this and this, and why it's so deep to us, and why we get so frustrated, why it's not cool for you to use it, all these things. and they're gonna fall asleep, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, I've heard all these things. But as soon as I put that in a rhyme and I rap it to them, they're like, oh, and I don't over forcefully like feed them all this stuff, right? And I just drop those things there. They think about it themselves and they receive it in a way more effective way, and they understand. And I was like, that's a way more effective message.
Like a tasteful way of getting the message across, a strong 100%. Message and important. Yeah,
you can say exactly what you want. My bad.
You're tuned into the In the Know Breakfast Show with BRIMBANK Live on Live FM with your hosts AD and Lydia, and we're joined right now with Titan, just social justice youth advocate, musician, and youth leader. All right, Titan. Thank you for that. Do you have any messages for our other young people about how to handle situations that, kicking and, you'd usually want to kick and scream about and get frustrated in a way that, like you said, is not productive in trying to get your message across? Do you have any advice for people who aren't musicians, perhaps? Is there other ways to go about it when you're being faced with these issues in everyday life?
The biggest piece of advice that I would have, what I learned that is the start of everything. Even if you find a way of expressing yourself, 100%, but being calm, like approaching things in a cool-headed manner, which is very hard to do because they're infuriating like situations that we put in. You get mad, but when you do get mad, the leverage of the entire situation is just given to whoever's like the aggressor, and that whoever's like telling you these things and oppressing you and like saying whatever they want to say to you. As soon as you get mad, they then go, okay, cool, I have reasoning to do what I want to do. And that's what police do a lot of times. Like the police that do urban police, they'll wait for you to get mad. And as soon as you get mad and do something because you're angry, now they have reasoning for, okay, this is why I did that and that. But if you don't get mad and you go, okay, cool, let me keep cool-headed and let me say, okay, cool, I know my rights. Why are you doing this? And you speak calmly and stuff. If they do something, the excuse is like hard for them to produce and stuff, right? Then my next piece of advice for the people that do get into situations with police, we have to start holding them accountable. When you don't hold them accountable, they do it to other people that look like you and they continue doing it and they get more brazen with how they do it, right? We feel like, okay, now that's just how it is. That's what the police do. They're above the law or whatever. And we don't address situations that occur within our communities and stuff. So if something will happen to you, and we'll just be like, okay, cool, whatever, let it go.
And I'd say in that situation, our phones are the most important piece of advice right now. Pick up your phone and start recording. Whether you know the law or you don't know the law, you can take that piece of video to someone who does later on and figure out, oh, this situation, didn't feel right to me at the time. Can you see or hear anything that
was out of line?
Yeah.
Actually, did you have any more pieces of advice, or can we ask you the next question? I don't want to cut you off.
I do. We gotta start. So a lot of my friends, when I go into like police accountability and the whole legal aspect of what I do now, a lot of my friends felt like it costs a fortune to get legal advice. It doesn't. You can get free legal advice. We got to start using our community legal centers. Those exist, and I would like highly recommend that if you're going through something and you don't know or you don't know where to get advice from and stuff, please do visit like our community legal centers.
Access your community services. That's one thing that's actually really shocked me, that there are like community services for anything and everything. We just don't know about it. That's great advice. And to finish off, Titan, what are three things that you're grateful for? And it can be with regards to anything.
I'm grateful that through this whole COVID situation, I'm still able to have a roof over my head, have all these situations I'm in. I'm grateful that I'm alive right now. I'm grateful for family, grateful for everything, just everything, family. Like, I don't even know.
You're grateful.
In general.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. You were tuned into the In the Know Breakfast Show with BRIMBANK Live on Live FM with your hosts AD and Lydia. And we were just joined by Titan, musician, social justice advocate, and a really influential youth leader. So thank you so much for joining us today, Titan.
Thanks for having me.